She was a young girl born to be on the silver screen. Her presence in film and television was starting to become familiar to viewers. Her career seemed to have no limits, but a troubled relationship ended her dreams and her life. Today on Hollywood True Crime, the murder of Dominique Dunne. Dominique Ellen Dunne was born on November 23, 1959 in Santa Monica, California. She was part of a highly respected family in the entertainment field. Her father, Dominique Dunne, was an ambitious television producer. One of her older brothers, Griffin Dunne, became an actor and director. Her uncles were writers John Gregory Dunne and Joan Didion. But the reputation and relationship with Hollywood celebrities didn't hide Dominique's and her family's sufferings. She had two other sisters who died within a week of their birth. In 1965, her parents divorced because Dominique seemed only concerned about his career, about organizing parties for his famous friends, and about the typical excesses of Hollywood, at a time when there seemed to be no limits. Also, her mother, Ellen Griffin, better known as Lenny, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and had to use a wheelchair. Despite everything, young Dominique was able to have a normal childhood and high level of education. She lived in New York and Beverly Hills and was able to have a great relationship with her father. After graduating from high school, Dominique enrolled at the University of Colorado to study acting. She stopped her studies for a year to live in Florence, Italy. There, she perfected her Italian and studied art at the Michelangelo Buonarroti School and at the British Institute. Submerged into the high culture that this environment offered her, she finally convinced herself that she wanted to be an actress. Back in the United States, she entered the studio of Milton Castells, a renowned actor and theater director. Soon after, she was part of plays like West Side Story and Mousetrap. But she knew the real action was in Hollywood, and she focused on looking for a job there. She wanted to make it big in cinemas like her most admired actresses, Julie Andrews, Jane Fonda, and Natalie Wood. Although she had a renowned family in the industry, Dominique started from the bottom. She found her first shot at The Diary of a Teenage Hitchhiker TV movie from 1979. From there, between that year and 1980, she became a guest actress in episodes of the Family and Lou Grant series, as well as being part of the television movie Valentine Magic on Movie Island. Her most stable role was in the short-lived Breakaway series, based on the hit movie. 1981 was a year of professional growth for Dominique. She appeared in more television productions, but above all, she got her first movie role. The movie was titled Poltergeist, and it was about a family living in a house full of supernatural phenomena. The project's producer and main ideologist was Steven Spielberg, which guaranteed a high quality for the film. In Poltergeist, Dominique was cast as Dana, the teenage daughter in the Freeling family. Filming took place between May and August 1981 in California. As the film went into post-production, Dominique continued her career, recording more series appearances. But not everything was work in her life. She also used to go to parties and events. In the fall of '81, during a private party, she met John Thomas Sweeney, who was a chef at Mal Maison, one of the most famous restaurants in West Hollywood. Born in 1956 in Hazeltown, Pennsylvania, Sweeney came from a very different environment than Dominique. His father was an unemployed alcoholic, while his mother worked as a waitress. They both divorced when John was 14 years old. Without any kind of restraint, he learned to make his own way from a young age. He wanted to leave his humble origins behind and become an important figure. Dominique and Sweeney came from two different worlds, but that didn't prevent them from immediately being attracted to each other. At first, everything was going well. Sweeney was an attentive and caring companion. Dominique was happy by his side, and her career continued to grow. But when they moved into a Rangeley Avenue home in West Hollywood together, the relationship changed. Sweeney revealed himself to be a possessive, controlling, and dangerous man. At first, the abuse was psychological. Sweeney prohibited her from seeing friends. He intended her to abandon her life and career, where he thought she might be tempted to go with another man. He wanted her to stay home. He wanted her all for himself, but moments later, he was sorry. He asked for forgiveness, and since she was still very much in love, she always forgave him. In June 1982, Poltergeist premiered in theaters, and it was an instant hit. The viewers had been terrified by various scenes, and above all, they had grown fond of the characters. Although she didn't appear much in the film, Dominique was also benefited by the event. One night, the actress was at PJ Clark's restaurant with Sweeney and Alex. Sweeney suddenly got up to go to the bathroom. In that time, one of the restaurant's clients approached Dominique and said the phrase, "What's happening?" a dialogue from Dominique's character at the end of Poltergeist. But the young man and her brother interpreted the situation for what it was, the sympathetic gesture of a celebrity's fan. But Sweeney, who was just coming back from the bathroom at the time, was seething with fury. He caught the man and shook him as if the fan wanted to take his girl away from him. For his part, Dominic was also concerned. Just the day after the incident with the fan, he met for lunch with his daughter and son-in-law at the Lutece restaurant. He could see that they were both tense, especially her. And during a dinner after seeing Dominique's participation in Fame, she confessed that the relationship wasn't going well and that she would never marry her boyfriend. Later, Dominique confessed her true feelings. "He isn't in love with me, Dad. He's obsessed with me. I'm going crazy." Sweeney's psychological violence soon became physical. The hits left visible marks on Dominique's body. In a chapter of the Hill Street Blues series, she had to play a girl beaten by her partner. The makeup department didn't need to recreate any injuries because Sweeney had beat her up the night before. Yes, those injuries that can be seen on the screen were real. Fed up with the awful situation, in 1982, Dominique decided to end the relationship. It was difficult because Sweeney didn't want to leave their West Hollywood apartment. There were discussions and more fights, but in the end, he left. Sweeney actually left the house, but not her life. He harassed her through phone calls and showing up where she used to hang out. Meanwhile, Dominique tried to continue her career. Thanks to her constant appearances on famous TV shows and Poltergeist, she was booked for a role in the pilot for an ambitious science fiction miniseries, V. She concentrated on work, but the horror was coming her way and charged with fury. On the night of October 30th, 1982, Dominique was at home with David Packer, her cast partner from V. Their plan was to rehearse scenes together. It seemed to be a night of hard work. Suddenly at 9 p.m. there was a knock on the door. Dominique opened the door and it was Sweeney. Once again, he asked for forgiveness and told her that he was distressed, that he wanted them to get back together, that everything would be fine now. Once again, she refused. But Sweeney didn't tolerate the rejection. In the middle of a new and growing discussion, he grabbed Dominique by the neck and squeezed her tightly. Dominique couldn't defend herself. Her ex's hands were large and powerful. She struggled as much as she could until she started running out of air. Inside the house, David had listened to the discussion, and when he went to the door, he saw Dominique lying on the floor. Sweeney remained by her side, and when the police arrived, he said, "I killed my girlfriend." But Dominique was still alive and was transferred to Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. The doctors were able to control cardiac arrest, but the attack had left her in a deep coma. A few hours later, Dominique, Lenny, and her brothers quickly traveled to California. The picture was terrifying. The young woman was brain dead due to a lack of oxygen. Only her heart allowed her to continue living. When Dominique was able to enter the room and see her, he was devastated. His daughter had her eyes open, her hair shaved, and a screw in her skull to relieve pressure from the brain. The strangle marks were still visible on her neck. The girl's parents were aware that Dominique's situation was irreversible. Crushed by their pain, they signed a document authorizing the doctors to disconnect the medical equipment keeping her alive. On November 4th, 1982, 19 days before her 23rd birthday, Dominique Dunne was pronounced dead. The burial took place on November 6th at Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles. On November 5th, John Sweeney, who had been arrested for attempted murder, was arrested on the charge of first-degree murder. The trial for the murder of Dominique Dunne was held in August 1983. Both Dominic and the rest of his family had to be present and recall the situation. The chances of a severe sentence against Sweeney seemed very possible, especially when Lillian Pierce, the killer's first girlfriend, appeared and confessed that she had also suffered abuse from him. But thanks to Patrick Terrell, owner of the My House restaurant, John Sweeney was able to hire Michael Adelson, one of the most important lawyers in Los Angeles. Adelson took it upon himself to disqualify the Pierce and Dunne family proof. His main defense tool was his client's sad childhood. On that premise, he explained that Dominique's rejection had led him to lose control and even suggested infidelity on her part. For his part, Sweeney recounted that Dominique was willing to forgive him and went on to say that at trial that if she hadn't decided to leave him permanently that night, he would have never had the urge to attack her. Adelson's movements and Sweeney's words paid off. He was convicted of voluntary manslaughter with a 6-year prison sentence. The Dunne family expressed their outrage to Judge Burton S. Katz. The media echoed the news and the judicial nonsense. Dominique's chronicles were published in the March 1984 issue of Vanity Fair titled Justice, a father's account of the trial of his daughter's killer. However, nothing altered the verdict. Actually, yes, it did change it, but for the worse. Sweeney only remained locked up for 2.5 years. Once released, he resumed his life working at the Chronicle, a restaurant in Santa Monica. The Dunnes found out his whereabouts and distributed flyers with the following words among the clients: "The food you will eat tonight was cooked by the hands that killed Dominique Dunne." Sweeney resigned and fled California. The Dunnes had no further news of him until the mid-90s. Dominic was contacted by a Florida doctor who had read the Vanity Fair article. The doctor was also told that his daughter had been engaged to a chef named John Sweeney, and he wanted to know if it was the same person that had murdered the actress. Indeed, it was the same person. Griffin contacted the doctor's daughter and tried to convince her to break the engagement. After this incident, Sweeney moved again and changed his identity. Later, Dominic turned to private investigator Anthony Pellicano to find Sweeney. Pellicano discovered that Sweeney now lived in the Pacific Northwest under the name John Mara. However, Dominic decided that it was time to stop clinging to a fact and an individual that brought him so much pain and stop chasing him. Both he and his family managed to move on. Dominic continued to have a major media career, especially as a writer, until his death in 2009. As for Lenny, she died in 1997. She founded a support group for homicide victims. For his part, Griffin participated in such films as After Hours, directed by Martin Scorsese, and today he is a well-respected actor and director. Television didn't forget Dominique. Her V character ended up being played by Blair Tefkin, but the show was dedicated to her memory. Dominique Dunne's murder was also part of what would later become known as the Poltergeist curse, as other actors from the movie also suffered tragic fates. But that is another story.